Hi, my name is Elizabeth Winter. I am a freshman nursing student studying microbiology at Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady University. Today I'm going to be presenting my presentation on virus mutation. We're going to be talking about viruses, why they mutate, how they mutate, and a few viruses that do mutate. This is a very timely topic because we're living in a global pandemic of coronavirus right now. The extremely high mutation rate of viruses, it's not matched by any other organism in the kingdom of life. They mutate very quickly, and this is a very important topic for future medical professionals to study because of two reasons. First, we're going to be the practitioners and caretakers of these people infected with viruses. But also, two, we're also going to be the ones researching and trying to find a cure for these sicknesses. Through this presentation, we're going to explore the mutation of viruses and how it relates to microbiology, specifically the first learning objective of our microbiology course, which one of the aspects is learning the concept of microevolution. We're going to be talking about the first and second lesson that we learned in this semester of microbiology. Through this presentation, we're going to have three main points. The first point is how and why does a virus mutate? Secondly, we're going to be looking at what viruses are mutating around us. Within this, we're going to be looking at influenza viruses and HIV viruses. And finally, we're going to be asking the question, what about coronavirus? What is going on in our current situation and the pandemic we are currently living in? Now we're going to dive straight into the question, how and why does a virus mutate? Viruses aren't technically living. That means that they require a host organism in order to reproduce. Whenever a virus becomes active, they have three main goals. Number one is to invade, two is to multiply, and three is to spread. Whenever a virus needs to invade a host, they need to overcome or pass their immune system. We'll talk about immune systems a little bit later. Second, they need to multiply. They need to start growing and spreading throughout their host, maybe taking over some of their cells and ultimately getting stronger. And lastly, they need to spread to other hosts around them. Characteristics that help a virus do its job, these three things, invade a host, multiply, and spread, tend to be kept from one mutation to another. But characteristics that make it difficult for a virus to spread to another host tend to be lost in these mutations. One way a host can protect themselves from a virus is to develop antibodies to it. Antibodies lock onto the outer surface of proteins of a virus and prevent it from entering host cells. So if a person has had, for example, a disease like chickenpox, they cannot get it again because that same strand of the virus is now prevented in the host's body. Now, if a host has never been exposed to a particular virus, they have no immunity against that virus, and therefore that virus can be very harmful to that person because their immune system has no previous background history of being able to fight this strain of the virus. This may be the main reason that viruses mutate. Of course, like any other organism, it wants to continue its kind. And in order for that virus to continue infecting hosts, it often needs to mutate in order to continue to infect those people. Now we're going to be looking at two special cases of viral evolution, influenza virus and HIV virus. Influenza, or the flu, is one of the most common viruses that we hear about. We often hear of the seasonal flu that comes around usually in the fall or the spring each year. We often hear about the strands of A, B, and C flu. Now, what makes this virus very interesting is that it's an RNA virus, and so there's changes to the HA and NA proteins on the surface of this virus. And there are two ways that the influenza virus changes over time. That's why we need a yearly update to our vaccination. One way that the virus mutates is that of antigenic drift, and this is a very slight change that happens over time to this virus, and this is not very dangerous because the virus is of the same sort. So a human influenza virus, if it just goes under antigenic drift, it's not as dangerous as if it would go through antigenic shift. Now, antigenic shift, as we can see on the top right of your screen, now those are two separate viruses combining to make a totally new virus. Now, birds and pigs have their own strands of the influenza virus. Now, whenever a virus from a bird or a pig, they mix and a human gets infected with this virus, it's very, very dangerous. The swine flu that happened in 2009 was so dangerous to humans because our immune systems had not ever seen anything like this influenza strand. A flu virus from a pig or a bird combined, and then a human got infected with it. We had no antibodies against it, and that's what made it so deadly. If a virus mutates in a human host so that it is easily spread among people, a pandemic may also result, as it did in the 2009 swine flu pandemic. Another interesting virus we're going to be talking about is HIV. HIV is a very rapidly reproducing and mutating virus. It is very susceptible to combination with other strands of HIV virus. For example, if a mother and a father had a child and they both had tested positive for HIV, and they most likely had different strands of the virus. Now their child has two different strands of HIV combined in his or her own blood. And this is very dangerous for that child because that child is highly likely to have a high resistance to anti-HIV drugs, and it's very probable with these new combined virus hosts. After these new viruses are combined and formed, they do not react to many of the drugs that have been previously constructed because the strands are so different, because they have gone most likely under antigenic shift. Quickly mutating viruses such as HIV are very hard to create a vaccination for. To date, researchers have developed several candidates for HIV vaccinations, but none have performed well enough in clinical trials to be able to be released to the public. Severe HIV causes AIDS, which is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and that prevents the body's immune system to be able to fight infections as effectively as it would as a healthy body. As we all know, we are living in a time of a live pandemic. COVID-19 is such a dangerous virus because no one has any immunity against its invasions. As of Tuesday, April 21st, Fox News reported that COVID-19 has infected more than 804,000 people in the United States, and roughly about 43,000 have died from this virus. But the coronavirus is not a completely new virus. COVID-19 is not the first of its sorts. It's been reported since the 1960s, and since 2003, there have been at least 5 new human coronaviruses that have been identified. In a study reported by Fox News, 11 randomly selected COVID-19 positive patients were researched, and over 30 strands of this COVID-19 virus were detected. These mutations were very slight, and they weren't very different from the original virus that came from Wuhan, China. Though mutations of a virus may look scary at first, though these mutations of COVID-19 have been tracked, there have been no significant change in the death rate of this virus that we are living in. We have tracked from Wuhan, China to the United States, and there are different strands of the virus, but the death rates seem to be the same. Mutations don't always make a virus stronger, as we see that mutations often weaken a virus, making it more susceptible to environmental factors. Virus mutation must be considered whenever developing a vaccination. If a new strain of a virus pops up after a vaccination has been submitted, then that virus may not be prevented by that vaccination, and it would all have been for loss. Scientists need to look at these new mutations, but especially the original mutations of viruses, in order to make a successful vaccination. Now, what have we seen today? I hope you have seen that virus mutations happen all around us. There are three main things we can do to be very productive citizens, productive future healthcare workers, and ultimately productive people. So first, we need to be prepared. Secondly, we need to be educated. And lastly, we need to be wise about virus mutations. First, we need to be prepared. Get vaccinated if available. Secondly, be educated. Listen to those news sources and government officials around us, advising us what we can do to be protected and to be prepared against these virus mutations and new viruses that pop up all around us. And lastly, we need to be wise. We need to have very common sense, and we need to ultimately make our own decisions and make logical conclusions about what a virus or a pandemic means to us. And finally, I leave you with a charge to take precautions and to protect yourself against viruses and their mutations always, not just in a pandemic situation. This could mean simply washing your hands for the proper amount of time, staying home if you're feeling sick, or wearing the proper protective equipment in a certain situation. I hope that you will continue to work with scientists and healthcare professionals to protect our community by making vaccines and ultimately acting responsibly. Thank you for listening to my presentation.